For a few seconds, the only sound that could be heard in the control room was the incessant humming from the radio. "I think we should reconsider our options here," one of the remaining staff members said. "For all we know, the door in the west section might not even open," I replied. "This could be a setup. And what if they're waiting for us on the outside? There's no way they'll let us just walk free." "If we stay here, we'll die," the remaining security guard said. Eventually, everyone agreed on overriding the doors, even if it meant opening the locks in the east section. The female researcher sat at the master PC and typed and clicked vigorously. "This might take a while," she said. "Hurry up." The guard responded, visibly agitated. "You want to sit and fucking try?" She turned to him. "Alright, everybody just shut up." Miller raised his hand. "Let's all just calm down and give this PC expert some space." This was all starting to get to us all, and it was visible from our hostility to each other. Even Miller himself had a hard time putting up a straight face. Everyone went quiet for a while, and that damned humming was the only sound which persisted. I tried to ignore it as much as I could, but the harder I tried, the more I seemed to be drawn in. The humming was constant, and sounded like it was on a loop. Some intonation, some same length of pause before starting again, literally like someone was just replaying it over and over. "What'd you just say?" the guard asked Miller, trying to break the silence. "What? I didn't say anything." Miller responded, baffled. The guard stood up and clenched his fist. "I just heard you say something." "It must have been your imagination." Miller calmly responded and turned his head back to the member at the PC. "Don't fucking lie to me, Miller." The guard got in his face. "You just said we're all gonna die here. I heard you." Miller pushed him back. "I didn't say a fucking word, you lunatic. Now back off." "You're the reason why we're here. This is all your fault," the guard hissed. At this point, everyone else tried calming the two of them down, shouting over each other. "I told you already that I don't know anything," Miller yelled at the guard as the crowd finally settled down. "Maybe if you paid attention in school more than you do now, you'd be in my position and understand instead of being a good-for-nothing minimum wage guard with no future." It all happened so fast. As Miller turned his back to the guard pulled his gun out and shot a bullet straight into the back of Miller's head. There were screams, and Miller's body fell limply on the floor, his eyes wide open in shock, blood collecting around his head on the floor. My ears were ringing from the gunshot. I pulled my own gun out and pointed at the guard, who was in utter shock at what he just did. "Oh my God," he mumbled, wide-eyed. I didn't mean to." "You're gonna need to lower your gun," I demanded. I didn't..." The guard started sobbing. "Fuck!" "I understand, alright?" I tried to be as reasonable as adrenaline allowed me to. We all had a reason to believe he was behind all this, but just lower the gun so we can talk. I'm sorry." He shook his head, sobbing. What happened next caught me by surprise as well. The guard pulled the gun to his temple and fired faster than I could react, causing another ear-splitting bang. The wall next to him was smeared in red and he lay dead on the floor. The humming suddenly stopped and turned into sinister chuckling before that stopped as well, leaving us in complete silence. Jesus. I mumbled in disbelief as the other team members gasped and cried. "How close are you to opening the doors?" I asked. The PC lady wiped her tears and responded, Just a few more minutes." She got back to work and the rest of us waited, trying to not look at the dead bodies. Almost ready," she said after a while. The subjects could apparently sense this because they started to rattle and bang on the door, causing us to recoil. We prayed that the door would hold at least until all the locks were disabled. "When the door opens, just run, and if the exit is locked, hide somewhere in the rooms," I said. One of the members who knew how to use a gun picked up the one from the guard, and we all got ready mentally. My heart was thumping 1,000,000 miles per hour, and I tried not to think about those things in the east section as their rattling became louder and more desperate. "Okay, get ready," the PC expert said. "Here it comes, let's go." There was a loud beep which signaled the doors were unlocked, and that was our cue. And that was the cue for the subjects as well, because Right after the beeping sound, there was a scream so violent and demonic that I could instantly feel the blood draining from my face. "Run!" I screamed as we bolted for the door towards the west section. As soon as we opened the control door, the blood-curdling screams permeated the corridor, muffling the panicked panting of my coworkers. Before we reached the west section door, a scream of one of our members was heard, but we had no time to turn around because we heard rapid breathing and loud, clumsy footsteps right at our heels. The screams now echoed throughout the entire facility, and it sounded like they were merely inches behind me, which made me run faster than I ever thought possible. I didn't dare look back out of fear of what I would see behind me, so I just kept running and praying those things were not faster. I tried not to think about them grabbing me as I heard a few gunshots followed by a loud cry of pain and vile crunching sounds. The exit was so close now. I thought that any moment I would feel a hand wrap around my arm or ankle and that I would be pulled back into that hellhole, but my adrenaline pushed me to run. There was a flight of stairs leading up, and on top of them, a door which opened to the cold night sky. I tumbled over the threshold, practically rolling forward on the grass before coming to a stop. Never before has the cold wind felt more welcoming than in that moment, but I had no time for respite. Another desperate scream ensued, and I looked back just in time to see the PC lady get dragged down the stairs into the dark underground by a long, bony arm. And then all sound stopped. I looked to my left, where the only other surviving member was, and we both stared at the dark entrance, unable to move our gazes from it. And then the humming started again. It echoed from the stairways, even more unsettling than it was over the radio. A thin, tall figure with elongated extremities appeared at the top of the stairs. Whatever human as left in the subject when he was locked in the room was gone now entirely. The creature walked slowly but deliberately with a disfigured grin on its face. I pointed my gun at the thing and fired. The creature barely even flinched and just kept coming right at me. I shot again and again until I was out of bullets and the subject was just chuckling, just like it did over the radio when Miller and the guard died. It came dangerously close and I felt powerless to move. It grinned even more widely as it realized this. "Open fire!" Someone shouted, and before I knew it, the creature was showered with a storm of bullets. The force of such firepower caused it to stumble backwards and then screeched in anger before it finally fell dead. The shooting didn't stop then either for a solid 10 seconds. I turned around and was quickly faced with soldiers shouting and forcing me and the other staff members on our knees. A man in a business suit stepped forward and smiled. I recognized him as the guy who offered me this project back in the office. "I'd like to thank you in the company's name for your selfless contribution," he said calmly. "Our deadline was 2 months, but you guys managed to complete it in just 2 days. You guys are the MVPs of the show. Now, I know you guys have a lot of questions, but these things are best left, unanswered." "You sick son of a bitch," the other survivor grunted. "When I get back, I'm going to the police and the press. You're gonna rot in prison for what you've done." "Oh, that's not gonna be a problem," the man said. "You signed an NDA in your contract, which strictly said you would not disclose any classified information to outside sources. You would have known if you, read it." He sighed and continued. "It just seems to me that you need more time to think about all this. Boys, take him back in." A couple of soldiers grabbed the researcher and hauled him to the entrance while he was begging and screaming. They threw him in and used the key card to lock the door, while the man continued to beg them to let him out, swearing he would never say a word to anyone. After only a few seconds, his screaming became much more violent and then quickly faded away. The man in the suit shook his head in disappointment and looked at me. "Now." He knelt, squatted down in front of me. "We won't have to do the same thing to you, right? You'll keep this all secret, yeah?" I nodded timidly. The man placed his hand behind his ear and turned towards me. "What's that? I can't hear you." "I'll keep it a secret," I said, avoiding eye contact. "Good." The man stood up. "Because in addition to the promised compensation, you just scored a huge extra bonus, and on top of that, you got promoted to chief of security," he said enthusiastically and smiled. "If that doesn't sound appealing, perhaps you would prefer a, more suitable reward, like working in certain company projects and such." I shook my head in defeat. "Good," the man in the suit remarked. "Now, let's get out of here. It's getting kind of cold, and Somebody get the client on the line. I want to congratulate him on a successful project.